point where we're starting to lose our surface. So I tell you what, I think the camera idea is good, just to at least get a view as to how effective that sealing was. We'll plan to do that in 6 months, and if everything looks good, in the meantime, we can continue to pursue this type of repair. In the meantime, let's keep after the erosion aspects of pipe repair. I'm not inclined, I don't think anybody in this room or on this table is inclined to go through every single pipe and every single joint. So at least eventually perhaps, but
long range.
yeah, exactly.
In your experience looking at the general condition of the pipe beyond the joints, how does it look now?
Pipe looks great. The pipe, like I was telling Diane, we also have another repair that we do. It's called Cured in Place, which is CIPP liner. And, you know, like I gave Diane proposals of both Cured in Place and repairing the joints. It's substantially more, but when you do Cured in Place, the thing that you do have is one continuous pipe with no joints. It's from point A to point B, one pipe.
Are these sections failed? Are they concrete pipes that are failed?
But the pipe itself is in good shape, sir. It's the joints are what the problem
Have
is.
you seen enough or dug up any of it to know whether it is broken, the failed, or it was just poorly installed?
I couldn't answer that question. That would be the only way to answer that question, would be to dig up the joints. From what I see inside the pipe, it doesn't look like broken bells. It looks like the gaskets were what failed. You know, and they could have very well rolled during installation. They could have been sliced during installation. You know, it's just one of those things. It's hard to tell. And then also, like Paul was saying, you know, the shifting of our soil. The reality is we live on a sandbar.
Well, it's all true, but if the valves are intact, the grouting is likely pretty effective.
Yes, yeah, and from what I saw on this, like the norm is to pump about 10 gallons on a joint. These came in at between 12, and this one particular area here, there was about 16 gallons on average, so you got a pretty good, you know, what we call a diaper.
Do you base that on pressure?
Yeah, and then the strokes of the pump also, yeah, both pressure and strokes.
I've got a question for Diane. Do we know how old this pipe is to begin with?
This is the Glen Eagles section, and I was told today at my public works meeting, they thought they started developing that about 30 years ago.
Okay, Wayne, thank you so much, sir. Oh, I'm sorry.
I had a question. You know, the original goal here was the 3 sections, and so one of the things would be to bring all of the 3 sections up to the same post-repair that you've done here. Do you have any cost outlook that it would take to do that?
Diane has it written now, so for the other two.
For the other 2 sections that we had planned to do each one of those joints is running about $28,000.
Each per joint?
No, that's a total. One section is 137 feet, the other is 230 feet. So for that amount, 400 plus, it would be, and one of those sections has a much smaller pipe, 24-inch, as opposed to a 34-inch pipe. So the difference in the size of the pipe also.
So for everything is 28. Do you put a person in the 24?
Well, 28 for one section, 17 for the next section.
So we're talking 45. 45 is what you're asking?
Yes.
That's 100% of the joint.
That is 100% of the joints. I ask them for a worst case scenario.
Diane, do you have any erosion in those areas, on those runs?
We do, that's why we picked these to video, to see if we were running in that 30% rule, but they only were able, we gave them the amount, they could only go to 35,000, that's what the board approved.
Right.
So when they got to $32,480, they thought they should stop.
Okay.
And we would still have to video those areas and clean the sand out for them to do the joints.
Your proposal is not in this packet. Do you have one that you wish to give to this board at this time?
It is in the packet. There's, if you look at Taxiway Zulu, That's 230 linear feet at 17,780.
North.
And Country Club,
Your estimates are predicated on the assumption of repairing 100%?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So if by chance we got lucky and it would come down?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't know where you're looking for this page.
Just on the, I think
right
it's,
here. It was in the packet. Right here. I think it's all in there. Right there.
I don't think it's
Well, I guess it's not. I was looking at my packet thinking that's what was included. But I do have it. And for 230 linear feet of 34 inch by 53 inch, it would be 28 joints, and the total would be 17,780. And for 137 linear feet of 24 inch by 38 inch, and a total of 17 joints, that would be $10,370.
Which is roughly 28,000 roughly.
10,370.
Yeah. So I thought it was,
28,150 to be exact.
What's the setup fee here?
They were gonna do all 3 sections for that one $1,500 setup instead of having that. And Lewis, I don't know, for coming back, is that another setup mobilization fee?
normally, but I'll talk to Mindy before we're down there. See if we can get her. I'll get her to you. I'll say, you go, we're leaving.
It's amazing what you'll do for peanut brittle.
Yeah, right? Jalapeno for the peanut brittle.
We have a little confusion back in the discussion here. Kindly, somebody revisit those numbers. The sections and cost for each one. The numbers that are 10,370 plus 17 something does not get us to the 45, and I don't know if you want to listen closer than that.
Yeah, I don't know where the 45 came from. It's 28,150 is the total for those 2 sections.
The board had approved originally $35,000 to do all 3 sections on the 35% rule, or excuse me, the 30% rule. But I asked for a worst case scenario, and that was the amounts that I got for the last 2 sections if we had to do 100%.
If the last sections are all all 100%, how much is it to do the other 2 sections?
The
That's
28.
the 28,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay, given that, and
When Lewis came up and met with us that day and we discussed this before the last board meeting, and we were talking about the 30% rule, and since we had the 30% on the original one that we just did,
right,
I asked them to give me a price to do 100% just in case, because there's several joints that have failed in that run, and that's this price. And we were hoping that they would all be 30%, and we could have done them all for $35,000.
The difference in the cost for the original and then the difference to add on. In other words, the difference between 32,480 and 35,000, the difference between the new cost is $25,630. That's the difference, including that extra 2,500 we didn't use already.
and these are areas in these second and third runs that are showing erosion.
Yes.
I think we better look at going ahead and doing these for the additional $25,000. Yeah.
We also talked at that meeting when Lewis came up and met with you and I and Mike, I think. Lewis planning to do sections of the community, and then videoing for long-term planning how many of these we are actually going to have to do. They don't all have to be done right now, but divide the community up in sections and plan on taking a look at them, and then decide which ones need the most work the quickest.
Does Drew's Isaac list any of this stuff?
Alan?
It's not helpful in this.
Okay. Then I'd like to go ahead and make a motion then that we accept the pricing that you've given for 100% sealing, joint sealing in the second and third runs.
Okay.
Make it 26,000. That's even. That gives you an extra $400 to screw with.
make a motion that we approve 26,000 for the next two sections.
I've got the motion, I failed to put in the 26,000, so let me restate the motion if you don't mind. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the 100% sealing of the joints in the second and third runs of the original proposal for an additional 26,000, not to exceed. Any further discussion?
Yeah, we got some left over.
It's left over.
We got left over.
Get left over from the first one.
We're counting that in.
You might as well say that the project is 28,150. Just so it's not.
Right.
Twenty-eight.
The project is 28,150. We have some monies left over from the previous approved amount of 35,000, and in the past that has not been able to be rolled over. And so my question at this point then is, do we go for the 28.1 or do we stay at the 26?
Say the 28,150 for the project and then.
Stay at 28,150 for the project. So in my motion, we will edit the 26,000 to show 28,150.
Mike, you second.
I did.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Wayne.
I'm sorry, did I call you Wayne?
Check clears, that's it.
Under new business, the Safety and Security Committee has elected Dan Garley as our Safety and Security Committee Chair, Bob Monroe as Vice Chair, and Julie Schloss as Secretary. Under new business, we are asking for board approval for these three. I have helped Bob with as a co-chair on the last two meetings of Safety and Security, and we also have some new blood that has volunteered to come in with that group. It is quite an active group at this point and very much engaged with new direction, with some new guidance, and I think everybody's excited about where we're going moving forward. So, from that perspective, Dan Garley has his acceptance of the nomination in your board packet. The other two, Bob Monroe, you know, and Julie, you know as well. Also, I'd like to thank Julie Schloss for her effort in going through the security budget. As you know, this started with a request from Jack Murray regarding security's budget to at least get some idea as to what the makeup of the budget is. And Julie has been instrumental in vetting out a great number of issues that we found within the budget that are personnel directed. And I think that some of this came as a shock to everyone. And so moving forward, there's going to be a great deal more oversight into how Safety and Security monitors and manages its budget for our security team. So, towards that end, I'd like to make a motion that we accept Dan and Bob and Julie in these roles. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Very well, thank you. The next item of new business has to do with some new plantings on POA property behind 3219 Vale View Drive. In your packet, you'll find an overview from the Volusia County Assessor's website that shows the area in question. You'll see Vale View Drive in about the middle of the page. The homeowner in question here is, if you count from left to right, 6 lots, you'll find the lot that is in violation. The owner of this lot bought the house without a survey. He paid cash for it. The resident before him had been maintaining the backyard, which fronts the South Creek Boulevard. Maintaining the backyard up to and including the large mature trees that exist there. As you can see, you'll also see the lot lines from the Volusia County's website. And notice that the lot lines, while not 100% accurate, they do intersect and divide a lot of those very mature trees. The question, the issue that has come up has to do with new plantings that that resident mistakenly thought were on his property. He subsequently found out that it was not his property, and thus the request for waiver went through ARC, as well as now it's coming to the board. The neighbor just to his south has planted similar things in there, in between the trees that are bisected by the lot line, and has done so many, many years back. But what seems to be the general notion here is that Ivy League Landscape takes care of the area of association property up to those trees, but not between those trees and the residents' houses. The residents are taking care of the ground between the back of their house and those trees. Now, it doesn't change the fact that if they're planting on association property, they are in violation of our covenants and restrictions. So, all of that being said is that we're looking at the enforcement of this CNR. I look at it as either full compliance or no compliance. And so what we decide here this evening should reflect the fact that what's fair should be fair for all of those residents, not just one or two. The fact that they have been maintaining the yard is problematic in Florida court. And you'll find in the packet that we have an overview from the Volusia County Assessor's website of a resident's home here in Spruce Creek that had a very similar occasion when plantings were made that encroached on association property in a very similar manner. The matter went to court. The POA lost the decision, and not that this is going to court, but I caution all of you in this discussion and in this decision-making process that the courts are very receptive to the residents. They are very receptive to those who are maintaining landscaping that may even be on association property, and they're apt to favor the resident before they favor the HOA, and especially if there is a concern for how the CNR is written. In this case, it doesn't seem to me that it's that ambiguous. I think it's pretty clear that the violation is occurring, and I think it's pretty clear that we have an obligation to fix that. In doing this, I am a little concerned about where the lot lines are actually dissecting the trees, or where the lot lines are as related to the old growth and the new growth that's being planted. So towards that end, after some discussion about this and some reflection on this, I think it might be premature to consider a decision at this point. I think what we need to do is to get a survey and to see where those mature trees are intersected by the boundary lines. I think that might have some bearing in how we move forward with this.
Paul, a recommendation, you could, since the homeowner is asking for the waiver, wouldn't you have the homeowner obtain the survey and provide us with a certified copy at his cost?
And certainly be appropriate, yes. But what I'm also suggesting is that this isn't just about this one house. This is about all the homes around that curve. And the survey for the association property might be more of the point here. I think we can safely say that we may resolve the issue for this one individual, but we haven't resolved the issue for the rest of them. And so from that perspective, I think it's going to be on us to get that portion of association property surveyed if it's not already, and marked if it's not already.
I think it's also important to note that the neighbors had planted prior plantings, bushes, trees and such along in POA property also, and this owner continued the line that was existing that had never been brought up as a violation prior. The ARC recognized it and did not consider it a violation at that time. But now this new planting is considered a violation, so we're not being consistent either.
Well, was this a complaint from a resident? How did this start?
This started as a complaint from the ARC. From a member of the ARC.
Why?
That I can't.
Paul, there is another issue here, and that is, and I'm not, I'm a lawyer by trade, I'm not trying to do anything but bring to the board's attention. In common law, there's something called adverse possession, so if an owner of a property openly and notoriously takes possession of someone else's property, uses it, and you acknowledge that, there is a danger that that property could be someday be deemed to be usurped by that owner. And I think in reading the packet that you sent us, what the judge did to avoid that issue is he gave and granted to those folks a license to allow those plants to remain on the property. But we're flirting with some critical issues. For example, someone who didn't know and did it for years, and now we all know. And so if you allow future violations, future plantings, is different from someone who didn't know and did past plantings. So I think you're going to have to get some input. I would recommend the board get some input from Kate Brooks Casey on how do we fairly treat this applicant, but then where do we draw a line in the future so the board is not burdened with people going out hearing about this situation, say, oh, we could plant the backyard because there's nothing there but POA property. And then, who maintains it, who doesn't maintain it. So it's just a slippery slope. We have to be fair, but we have to be careful.
I agree, Jack. I think that, I think that it's kind of like a trademark. If you abuse the trademark, you end up losing the sanctity of that trademark, and or if you allow the trademark to be abused. And in this particular case, whether the abuse was intentional or whether it was completely accidental, the fact is that this isn't the only issue. And in fact, one of the neighbors there has had a yearly party in his backyard that encompasses not just his backyard but also association property, and this year ended up being quite objectionable with people parking on association property. We had inflatable houses and this sort of thing for kids to play on, and it was obviously a significant abuse of the association's grounds. That has since been fixed, and our general manager, I think, has talked to those individuals and offered another alternative. But the truth is that I think before we do anything, a conversation with Brooks Casey would be appropriate. I also think a survey would be appropriate as well. So I think taking those two actions before we make any further decision on this matter would be the way to move forward. Any other discussion? Any other comment? Very well. The Architectural Review Committee proposal as presented to the board on insurance, licensing of vendors, and fee cap on owners. This came to us as a written request and is included in the packet through John Erickson and his review committee. The essence of this is that there is currently a $20,000 cap on a maximum deposit. Their interest is in lowering that to $10,000. When this discussion first came up, I was inclined to stay with the 20. The ARC is, as a group, recommending that we drop it to 10, citing the conditions that exist with respect to the contractor and what he's required to carry as risk insurance and so on and so on. Other than that, I have no particular desire to go against what the ARC wants. If this is what they think is the right move to make, then I guess I'm okay with that, but I'd like to hear if you guys have anything to say about this.
What is the fee cap? Is that it's not an insurance cap, is it?
It was a percentage of
It's
the
a
building cost, will be withheld until completion, of the final survey, inspection. And they're proposing more, it got pretty high.
Because of the cost of various projects.
We were holding on to, in some cases, over 100,000.
No, for 50, yeah. The intent here, of course, is that if there's any damage to association property or if there's anything that needs to be fixed or repaired or whatever, and the builder blows out on us and vacates the job, at least we have an avenue to use in order to make the repairs necessary. But I think it is on the builder and it is on the owner. And I think if we are empowering our committee sufficiently well enough, and this is the intent that they want to see, this is the amount that they want to see, and they think it's reasonable, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't embrace that.
I would second that motion.
I didn't know I made a motion.
You just did. It sounded like it. to me.
All right, then, I'll make, how's that other ear doing?
The other one's perfect, that's what it hurt.
All right, well, I'll make the motion then, that we accept the edit to the maximum deposit and cap it at 10,000.
Dennis, you second.
I will again second that motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The last thing we have on our list here this evening is the discussion around ceasing the option of using credit cards for your annual assessments. Randy has found that using credit cards for us, in spite of the $50 fee that a resident is charged when he uses his credit card to pay his annual assessment, we are still losing money. And it is last year, I guess, we had 9 users of that credit card transaction. This year, we have currently 17 that have used it. I don't particularly like the use of credit cards. I think it's a waste. But right now, I guess, Randy, we have a contractual issue with the merchant account.
Yeah, it's a 3-year contract, which we're a year into. So we couldn't get a commitment from them to let us out of the contract without having to pay $80. They have taken it to their superiors to see, given the volume that we do other banking with them, if they can.
What, we don't have enough money in their bank? Is that the problem?
Just a couple of mil, not that. So we're using that as leverage, and we'll see.
Do we let people pay in Bitcoin?
I'll ask you all to please ignore the inappropriate comments. Well, I think what the board might want to at least discuss is the concept of moving away from using credit cards. Is that, in spite of the contractual issues that we have here, what's your feeling about, just moving away from using credit cards at all?
Isn't there a double-edged?
I'm elected.
Isn't there a double edge to this sword? I mean, obviously, credit cards are a way for folks to pay when they don't have the cash at hand. and we get the money right away, but we pay a cost to get that money. So rather than preclude people who might be suffering some hardship, why don't we increase the fees so we don't lose money on the transaction, and then it's a win-win. If they don't have it, if they want.
What Randy said, I'll just quote it since nobody else is reading it, is we charge $50 per owner for the service, and we need to charge a total of $118 to break even.
Right. So why not pass the cost on to the owner, and if they want to absorb that cost, it gives them an opportunity to finance their charges. And if they make that decision, that's their decision. As long as we get our money, we're gonna get our money faster than if they can't pay and they're late, then gonna be late fees, and we're gonna charge, go after them for late fees. Just a thought.
Exactly, the charges will up
Each
with
year.
lower volume.
Yeah.
So if less people go,
Right.
or just a few, we still pay the bill.
But we got a 3-year contract on those charges, right? So we would know what those would be for until the next contract, is that right, Randy? Just a suggestion, I mean, you might want to increase the fees, then it's the homeowner's choice. I'm not wild about credit cards, but I find that folks will use credit cards sometimes when they have no other means to pay.
Or if they're away and they can't, they
Yeah.
just realize that, they're about to incur a late charge unless they do something quickly. Yes, Mo?
Randy has referenced contractual relationship. I'm failing to understand that. If we have some kind of dealings with a bank or a credit card company that is either controlled or owned by the bank, I'm failing to see what it is that we are contractually obligated to do if we decide to not, if people decide to not permit the use of credit cards for the payment of dues.
The merchant account is a third party.
Monthly fees.
Yeah, month.
Right, but his point, I think, is no charge to us for the transaction that doesn't happen.
That's correct.
So there's no, I'm just was thinking about the burden on the homeowner, that's.
I'm thinking about the numbers.
Yeah.
At 9 last year and 17 this year, as
That's not
opposed to
worth
$1,600, it's, $1,600,
Right.
POA fees, it's just not worth messing with.
Can you reasonably make, because I believe you will have an increasing number of people who are likely to want to use credit cards to pay these fees. Can you, maybe Jack, draft something so at whatever the current rate is we have to pay, there's an upcharge?
Well, that's what we,
Well, we may end up having to do that anyway, because getting out of a merchant account is a rather costly affair. And I know, I've been there, I've had to do it. And so,
But if we're in a merchant account, we haven't told them that we're going to accept money for payment of dues. That's not part of our obligation. We'll
No,
do other
no.
things with it.
right, right. So the fact is that either we pay the money up front to get out of the contract that we have with the third party, or we keep it for the term and charge the fee that it is required for us to at least break even.
right.